Phronesis. Practical Wisdom with Scott Allen.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this beautiful world. My name is Scott Allen, and I am the host of Phronesis, Practical Wisdom for Leaders. I am an associate professor of management at John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio, USA. I'm an author, an entrepreneur, a speaker, a nonprofit founder, and the host of 2 podcasts. I'm also a husband and dad of 3. You just heard from Kate, my daughter, who wrote and performed the Phronesis intro. Phronesis offers a smart, fast-paced discussion on all things leadership. My guests are scholars and practitioners, and we cover timely, relevant topics and incorporate practical tips designed to help you make a difference in how you lead and live. Now, I am proud to share that Phronesis is the official podcast of the International Leadership Association, an association that is near and dear to my heart. ILA brings together leaders and those who teach, study, and develop leadership, advancing leadership knowledge and practice for a better world. Learn more at ilaglobalnetwork.org. If you like what we're up to, please click subscribe so you can stay up to date as we release new episodes each week. You can also share what we're up to with others. And now, today's show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, everybody. This is Scott Allen, and this is Phronesis. And I'm really excited today to introduce you to Helle Jorgensen. She is the CEO of Competent Boards, which offers the global online ESG Competent Boards Certificate and Designation Program, with faculty of over 100 renowned international board members, executives, and experts. She has a 30-year track record in turning environment, social, governance, climate, and sustainability risks into innovative and profitable business opportunities. She has worked with many global Fortune 500 board members and executives, as well as smaller companies and investors. She is on all kinds of very, very interesting boards throughout the world. His Royal Highness Prince of Wales Accounting for Sustainability Global Expert Panel. She's also on the World Economic Forum Expert Network for Corporate Governance, Leadership, and Emerging Multinationals. Canadian Climate Government Experts, a Commonwealth Climate and Law Initiative. She is an attorney. She is doing incredible work around the world. You can look at her full bio in the show notes. And I am so honored to have you today, Helle. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, I'm so honored to be here with you, Scott, and thank you for that long introduction.
That's good stuff right there. That is really, really cool. Now, here's where I want to start our conversation. How did you gain a passion for this work?
You know what? It actually started 30 years dating myself here, perhaps a little bit longer than 30 years ago. I read a newspaper article, and that was a newspaper article where a professor from the Danish Technical University were being interviewed about lifecycle assessment, about how could we save water and how could we save energy by thinking about how do we produce products, and not looking at it, just now I'm using a computer, but look at it from a life cycle. At that point, I had my business law degree, and I was actually studying to become an accountant. And I had 6 months to do my master thesis. And I was just reading this article, and I thought, what if we could price the externalities? What if we could put the price into all of these things? What if we could start really embedding that value into the profit and loss?
Yes.
The income statements, the balance sheets of the companies. Could we then actually value, environment, all of these factors in a way so we made informed decisions? Yeah. So that's where it all started. He sent me this wonderful professor, Leo Alting, sent me to the Danish steelwork that was, producing steel, but actually recycling steel. And I was just put there and said, how can you help us produce a report that shows the stakeholders how much or how little we are polluting, etc. And that became the first green account in the world. So that's where it all started.
Well, so tell me about that. So this is 30 plus years ago. This had to have been a completely foreign concept as you were talking with industry leaders, business executives. Talk about some of that work, because you are actually actively working to influence people to see value in this. And in some cases, I imagine, well, I can't imagine you got any pushback whatsoever. It's been smooth sailing, correct?
Well, let's just say it's much easier now.
Yeah.
No, you're right. At that point, I actually started in accounting, Price Waterhouse at that point, and yeah, I was probably a little bit different. Asked many questions, and tried to see how do we really, again, at that point we were talking mostly about environment. How do we embed that into the way we did audit and everything else? And for some reason, I was allowed to use 50% of my time actually building the practice, and I got to work with ton of companies. And actually also the Danish legislature, those that make the law, okay, in terms of reporting and how so that came into saying that companies in Denmark at that point needed to report on environment, social issues, and I got to help the EU in terms of the directives, etc. So it was quite fascinating. But yes, you're right. There was a lot of people that were, why are you doing this? And to be frank, I mean, when we started the competent boards movement in 2019, so 2 years ago, in Davos during the World Economic Forum, and where I said, I believe that board members need to be the stewards, and therefore we need to ensure that board members actually have the insight when it comes to environment, social issues, and embed that into the governance.
Yeah.
And at that point, again, to be honest, I had, Paul Pullman, wonderful Paul Pullman, with me, the then chair of Unilever, Michael Tresco was behind me, and others. But it was few. Many were saying, why do you want board members to understand this? Isn't this the job of the CEO or the sustainability person? Yeah. So again, fast forward now, there was a few days ago, I saw an article where nominating committees and non-gov committees on boards are now looking hard for people with ESG experience to oversee ESG and sustainability and climate change matters in the boardroom. And clearly now what I'm trying to do is, how do I educate? How do I help those board members, both those that are right now in the boardrooms, but also those that will be board of directors, to have this insight, to have this mindset, and make the right decisions? Because otherwise, we're sitting in a situation where we have board members that are now appointed to a new committee called Sustainability or ESG Committee. But if they don't have that insight, it is very, very hard to make informed decisions if you're not informed.
Exactly.
So that's basically what we're trying to do now. And so far, we are hearing a lot of good feedback from board of directors all over the world on the value. And some of them are saying that they are being re-elected, which other board members around the world are not being re-elected at the moment because they don't have this insight.
I'm going to go back again because I want to come back to boards for sure. How does your background in accounting and in law inform your work? I think it's a beautiful combination of law, accounting. Did you have any sort of background in environment or just a passion for the environment? Because I'm sure you've learned a great deal about that space over the years. But coming at this with those two perspectives specifically, that's a powerful combination. Would you agree?
Well, thank you. Yes, I will, and I'm telling often when I have younger people telling me, oh, they really want to work in sustainability departments, etc. I'm saying, you know what, go and work in another department. And I think you're right, because when I was out auditing, you get to know what sales are thinking. You get to know what procurement thinks. You get to know what the production. You get to know all of these different functions. And if you don't understand that, right, you don't really understand how the business works, and therefore you can't really help. So what I often unfortunately see is that it's the language, right? We might be speaking English, but from time to time I'm saying, well, if I started now saying something to you in Danish, well, you might understand with your Swedish background, but I could shout as loud as I want to, you'll still not understand it. And that's what I see from time to time, that we have these people within the business, sustainability minded, but they don't understand the language of the board, and the board do not understand the language of the sustainability people. We're getting closer and closer, but that's such an important thing to really understand. And yes, you can say I'm using my business law. Don't go out and test me. Okay. I am using my accounting, and what's the fascinating thing now is actually in this master thesis 30 years ago, I was writing about how do we embed the environment into the financial statements. And what's happening right now is that the global standard setters, the global financial standard setters, are exactly doing that right now. We expect that when we get to November, that the IFRS, so the International Financial Reporting Standards, will, together with some of the different standard setters within sustainability area, actually will come together and form a way where it's not sustainability on one side, financial on the other side, but how do we integrate it? And that's going to be powerful.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. And to have been witness to that spectrum of experiences, I have to imagine that feels really, really rewarding, that you've been a part of that work, right?
But of course it does. I think we have so much more to do, and yes, we can sit and say, yes, been part of the work. But we do need to move much faster. This is not about, let's see who can do something first.
Yeah.
I can tell you, yes, I did the first green account in the world. I actually also did the first integrated report in the world. Yeah. And I can sit here and say, be proud of that. But right now we are on we are in a timeline when it comes to also climate reporting, something we didn't even think about. Well, at least most did not think about, 30 years ago. And now I think we all see it, in the streets and being countries all over the world with fires, drought, flooding, you name it. And we really need to, both from a climate and a biodiversity point of view, step up. Yeah. And we need to, that's again why I think it's so important that we need to embed this into not as a thing at the side, but really embed it into the way we do business. Yeah. This is no longer a sideshow. This is something we need to think about, we need to do, we need to budget for, and we need to report on in a transparent way.
Hello, what I'm excited to hear your perspective on, you were just saying, look, I'm really excited this November, some of these shifts might occur, which would be wonderful. What are some other things right now that are really exciting you in the work? And paint us a picture of, you said we're on a timeline. This is not, as we speak and record in mid-July, Germany is experiencing massive flooding. The American West is on fire again. And we could kind of take a tour of the world, and there's some things that are happening that are not good signs of what's to come. So what else is happening that excites you? Look, these are small wins. We're making progress. This feels good. Okay. We're not there yet. Here's some things that also have to happen. Would you paint that picture for us?
Well, when we're talking about November, we're talking about the big climate meeting that's going to happen in Glasgow, so COP26. And clearly the world is looking at it, and I'm very excited to see how many that are stepping up and setting goals and setting targets and really want to green the world and transformation in that respect. Of course, sorry, there's a flip side on this.
Yeah.
The thing is that I'm also seeing there's a lot of green washing.
Yes.
There is what say green wishing. There's actually the good Mervyn King that say green washing and green wishing. And I have added on, we need green walking. We need to walk the talk. It's not enough what we do at the moment and saying, by 2050, we do this and this. If we don't put the budgets in, if we don't put the resources in, if we don't have the plan and have the accountability and the transparency aligned to it, it's just like, hey, I always wanted to run a marathon. Right?
It would have been nice. Yeah.
And EU actually now came up with this new Fit for 55. And I'm going like, are they trying to tell me something that I need to be fit for 55? Of course, that is the European plan in terms of climate, right? Yeah. But if I don't train, if I don't put the time and the effort into it, it's never going to happen, and it's probably never going to happen. And I probably need to say, hey, I'm really happy with the half marathon that I did. We just can't do that when it comes to climate. We can't say, oh, I'm happy with where we at. That's just not enough. We need to look at it. And I think we are seeing not only on the streets and flooding, etc., but we are starting to see the stranded assets. We are starting to see that the asset managers are voting out board of directors that are not fit, if we can put it like that, not for fit for 55, but fit for that. We are seeing that young leaders, young talent are taking companies to court. We are seeing this duty of care being looked at, and even the Australian climate minister now in terms of your duty of care to make the right decisions. So we're being held to account on a totally different way of looking at it. But I think all of us need to look at ourselves and saying, okay, how can we really bring this forward in going back to not just a wish, but put the resources, put the budgets, put the plans, and walk the talk. Or as I just wrote an article about it, I say, or run as your life depends on it, because it seems like we need to stop talking and start acting. Yeah.
Who is acting? Who has impressed you in there? And it could be a country, it could be a corporation, but who's on your radar as someone who genuinely, thoughtfully is putting these pieces into place, building the infrastructure, and leading the way? I'd read an article about Denmark. It was it could have been 3 or 4 years ago, that the country was running on clean energy. Is that accurate? Is that an accurate statement?
I am my dear, one of my home countries. I've now both a Dane and a Canadian at the same time, so dual citizenship, and a lot of amazing things coming out in Denmark. And I think what is fascinating is that it's this way of thinking, and it's hits also on the incentives, right? So very early on, there was put a hefty price, if you look at other places around the world, on energy, on water, etc. What does that mean? It means that people start innovate.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's another thing we need to think about. So definitely Denmark. I have just interviewed the Minister of Climate and Biodiversity from New Zealand. And another place that really have put the foot forward. TCFD, which is the Task Force for Financial Related Climate Disclosure. I always get that one wrong. But
Helle, how many? You have a lot of acronyms in your head.
Oh my goodness, there is a big alphabet soup in my head.
Well, can I tell you this? Can I tell you this story really quickly on New Zealand? I was interviewing a professor at the University of Waikato in New Zealand a couple days ago, and she mentioned that a river had been given personhood, legal rights, personhood, a river in New Zealand. Isn't that interesting?
That, and I think that I was not aware, and it just start to question the way that we have valued different things. So going back to what is that the Danish Technical University and life cycle assessment, I was asked to look at these life cycle costs, right?
Yeah.
But if we start to think about all of these, you say the river, water, it's all interrelated, it's all connected.
Yep.
And again, going back 30 years ago, we built higher smokestacks or longer pipelines and thought like, oh, okay, pollution going away. Right?
Yes.
Now we start to understand that no, it does not. And I think that understanding that pollution do not respect borders, they do not read all our commitments, they do not read all our goals. Yeah. We need to do the work on that. I think that is so important. You mentioned in terms of yes Denmark, yes New Zealand, but with all due respect, wonderful countries but quite small. We need the whole world. We need the global governance around this. We need to say, what is the price on carbon, and have the global price, and then again embed that in to our financial systems. The US clearly now doing a lot. China's doing a lot, right? But we need to have that global, not commitment alone, but actually doing. Again, the article that I just put out, I went in and looked at the commitments that we countries did years ago, also ahead of the big meeting in Paris, where we got the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's a long way from what was committed,
really,
to what is actually funded. Yeah. And so again, it's so easy to come up with the commitments and the nice speeches, etc. Another thing is to do it. I do think, Paul Pullman, as I said, one of those that I have supported from the start, and from when he was the CEO of Unilever, and Michael Tresco, who was the chair of Unilever at that point, a company that walked the talk and been very open, saying, hey, there's a lot of things still to do, but had the courage to go ahead and say, no, I'm not going to do this because we're going to do this. Had the courage to go out to the different stakeholders and really made changes. Had the courage to go out and work together with competitors, because that's another thing, this partnership, right? So I think there are a lot of companies at the moment that's doing a lot. I just want to make sure that it's not we're doing a lot up to COP26 in November, and after that, there's probably something else we're going to then do. We need to commit, and we need to hold ourselves and each other accountable.
Yeah. Well, Unilever, I mean, even their purpose, values, principles, I mean, it's right there. The highest standards of corporate behavior towards everyone we work with, the communities we touch, and the environment on which we have an impact. It's there. And it's good to know that in your experience, they're putting in the infrastructure to help live that. So how do we, from a leadership standpoint, how do we influence? I watched the documentary on Greta Thunberg and her frustration, right? She'll get to these large meetings and just challenge because it's a lot of talk, it's a lot of verbiage. And what would your thinking be? 3 or 4 or 5 things that kind of need to happen to really influence countries and organizations to really start putting action behind those words? I'm sure it's any number of tactics. The law, correct?
Yes, but I think, of course, you can say, okay, the law, and let's have compliance. Great, but we also all know that's a little bit later in the game.
Yeah,
we need the mindset, and we need, as I said, and the whole reason why we are educating board of directors and executives is that we need to have that understanding. Not that this is okay, I should probably also look at that, but this is the part in the middle.
Yeah, that
we need to look at. We need to have. We put out a report about the brain, the heart, and the hand in terms of actions.
Yeah,
we need leaders to be able to say, I don't understand this. Try to help me understand, what can I do. We need to probably start sunsetting different activities instead of just selling them off to someone else and saying, oh, see, now we don't have that in our portfolio anymore.
Yes.
Well, if you have someone else that are taking even worse care of it, then you actually, as a global system, worse.
Yeah.
So I think we need that. We need to have this competence, yes, and but also be courageous. We need to say, what's the transition plan? Let's look at what is it that we have that stranded assets or could be stranded assets. Let's hear from our stakeholders, from our employees. What can we do? There's so much of innovation out there.
Yeah.
But we often talk about diversity of thought. But do we really allow it in the organizations? Do we really value and encourage, that person that say, oh, couldn't we do this in a different way?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all too often, we have well, we tried that, or no, that would never work. I think we need to use all of these. Yes, the law. Yes, shareholders are asking. Yes, talent is asking, and frankly, walking away if they don't. Customers are demanding it.
Yes.
But I'm going back to my board of directors.
Yep.
They are the ones that are the stewards.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm writing a book, and it's going to be called Stewards of the Future.
Yeah.
So in my mind, they are really, those are the board of directors that have that responsibility. They have to, ask the CEO, ask the management team, what are we doing? Understand it. Do we have enough set up of budgets? What kind of innovation are we looking? Really encourage that. I think that's the huge, huge, huge opportunity that, frankly, most, if not all, corporate directors and companies standing right in front of that. I agree with you. Laws and regulation, yes, but that's not really going to drive this.
Yeah.
You have way too many countries that needs to come up with laws and regulations. Yes, you can say in terms of Europe, where and how do we, if you start exporting to Europe or importing, if you're in Europe, yes, you can start putting things on that. But why go through all of this and wait for it instead of starting right now to do that innovation, right now to look at your transition plan, right now to say, how do we commit to make this work? Not when I am, I have retired.
Yeah.
But now, Michael Tresco once said to me, making the long-term decisions, the right long-term decisions, meaning making the right short-term decisions. This is not something we can say, oh God, now we have a 2050 goal, so we'll wait to 2049 to actually do something about it. We need a plan, and we need that plan right now, and we need to follow up on that plan. We need to report on that plan. We need to tell our stakeholders about what's our plan, and we probably need to see every single year, how can we perhaps do it even better?
Yeah. Yeah. What is your assessment as to why it seems to me Europe is far ahead of other continents? Why is this? Would you agree with that or no?
Well, it depends on what kind of things we're looking at. Yeah. If it comes to the regulation, yes. If it comes to some of the innovation, yes, I actually think that you can, I was asked to, when we could travel to go to China to do a series of keynote speeches. And if you look at the rail system and you go like, oh, okay, that's smart. There's a lot of things happening different places that are really something that we ought to see other places as well. Europe, yes, and again, I've been asked many times, perhaps on other areas as well as like stakeholders and why is it that a country like Denmark, you see so much innovation. You see Vestas, you see Ørsted, you see Novo Nordisk, Novozymes, Danfoss. I'm probably forgetting a lot of the companies, but all that are so far ahead.
Yes.
You're talking about a small country that don't have that many resources.
Yeah. Well, I had just read the other day that Lego had put out some of their first. Lego. Some of the first, Legos were being made out of recycled product.
Well, yes, and Lego. Sorry, how could I forget? And I have had the great pleasure of working, both playing and working with Lego for many years, and actually traveled also the world with them. So, IKEA, if you go to Sweden, right? You have many of these companies, and I think. Maybe it is for the simple reason that it is a small country. So you can't just pollute and say, okay, I'll travel somewhere else. If you pollute your back garden, you're not going to get any crops out of that next year. Right? Yeah. If you don't understand that you need to look into next year, you're not going to get food on your table next year.
Yeah.
If you're, if I really, back then, if you're not good to your neighbors, Sweden, Norway, you might be in war, right? And while if you can think about now, I'm in Canada, and yes, south of the border, I have the US. And if you're US, you might say, okay, I have water on one side, water on the other side. I have Canada. Thank you. We really, appreciate Canadians, and you have Mexico, and yes, we appreciate them as well, but not that big of a threat, right? Yeah. And you have so much land.
Yeah.
So if I pollute the river here, if I pollute the ground here, well, we just move somewhere else. I'm not saying but I think there is some mindset that perhaps have been, if that is true or not, but my own little pocket philosophy here.
Well, but I love a couple things about you. I love that, as we said earlier, I love the combination of law, of the accounting and the language of business, and then the mission of how do we focus on ensuring that our organizations are doing good and doing well, but doing good and leaving this planet intact. So there's a triple threat there of just how you look at the world. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And then you've honed in on, again, these individuals who they're the stewards and these board members who are placed in these positions, many of whom I would imagine know very little about this space, very little, depending on where they are in the world. By no fault of their own, it just wasn't necessarily an area of expertise 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It would be similar to digitization in some ways, that, I'm sure a number of these corporate board members do not understand artificial intelligence, blockchain, sensor technology, quantum computing, etc. Yet those are having a major impact on business. So focusing there and trying to help these individuals understand and become more educated and shifting, like you said, that mindset, it's God's work. Whatever God means for you or a listener, it doesn't matter. I'm not putting any version of that. You're earning karma points. The universe is happier because of your existence, whatever it is.
Well, and I should, on that, all of those things you actually just said now, but also like cybersecurity, responsible use of data, AI, digitalization. It's actually things that we now have in the program. But good. All of it with this ESG and good governance lens. And it's because of all of these, over 100 global leaders that are all the time both bringing their insight to all of these global board members that are joining the program and executives, but also saying, Helle, you need to have something about this and this in the program, because this is something we're discussing. So we are keeping this program up to date on a constant basis. I have to admit, from time to time, I'm trying to tell the world, could we just stop for 15 minutes?
Do we need quantum computers just yet? Can we hold off for just a moment?
Exactly. But at the same time, that is what's so amazing and fascinating. So we are on a constantly updating the material, and clearly, I have 70 or more, I guess, more than 70 global board members, executives that's joining me each week, right? Wow. So I'm learning from them, and they're from all over the world, right? So I get to know what's happening in Latin America. I get to know what's happening in Africa, Australia, Asia, India, Europe, North America. So I'm joking from time to time. I really need someone from Antarctica. Then I would have all the continents represented. But then again, I'm not really sure I want that, because I like to have the ice.
Well, okay. So as we wind down our time, is there anything that you've been watching or listening to or streaming that's caught your eye in recent months? It could have to do with what we've discussed today. It may not have to do with anything we've discussed today. But what would you like listeners to learn about or know about?
Well, unfortunately, we're seeing in Canada a lot of unmarked graves being found in terms of the indigenous and the residential schools. So actually watching at the moment a series called Future History, and I would say probably about the crimes against indigenous people over many years, and I think it's also about the wisdom, that and that indigenous people bring. And I'm actually, if you really think about it, I say stewards of the future. But if you think about many of them, it's stewards of the land. stewards of the air, steward of the animals, what we call biodiversity, right? Of the water.
Yeah.
In a lot of the things that we are now struggling to bring back, and I think it's the respect and this honoring of the surroundings. So yeah, I mean, I'm living now in Canada. It's a big thing of the history, and needs to be something that we all learn and learn from, and have that respect for the wisdom, because it's basically a lot of wisdom. So
it's mind-boggling to think that the last of those schools was shut down in 1997. They just, in the United States today, I was literally just watching Reuters, and they exhumed, I think it was 20 bodies, if I'm not mistaken, of children in the U.S. at the Army War College. I believe that's in Pennsylvania, and it's mind-boggling. It really is.
Yeah, and it tells you that you can question how can anyone ever go to there, but I think again, we really need to learn as humans to speak up, right? And say, oh, that's wrong, and I think we need as humans to learn to also in other settings, right? To respectfully disagree, speak up, have the courage to say, oh, no, that's not wrong. Not just saying, hey, that has nothing to do with me. Gopal, can't say the full name, but Gopal was former director of Tata in India, and that's why I can't say the full name, Gopal Krishnan. And Gopal said, in board of directors need to think that it's like their children, right? A mother would never, just look at saying, oh, okay, well, let's see what's going to happen in the future here if something was wrong. But all too often you hear people saying that, oh, I knew that was, but I didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
We need to step up and actually do something. And I think, hey, it's easier said than done, but
you are, and thank you for the work that you do. It's incredible. Again, we could spend a long time kind of surveying what you have seen over the last few decades and the progress that's been made, but then the work that still needs to be done, because as you said, we're on the clock. And how do we build those pieces and that infrastructure to ensure that these words that we walk the talk? And thank you so much for your leadership. Thanks for the work that you do, Helle.
Well, thank you so much for the work you do and your leadership.
Well, be well, take care, and I look forward to having another conversation down the road.
And likewise. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. I am listening to the book Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And I was reminded while listening to that of our conversation. Helle, she brings such a wonderful integrative perspective to this topic. Her background in law, her background in accounting, knowing the language of business, and then also knowing who the key decision makers are, who needs to be educated, who needs to have the understanding, who needs to have the awareness, and as she said, the mindset. And by working with boards all over the world, she's doing incredible work to shift that mindset so that our organizations are led by individuals who have that expertise. That is wonderful work. And I truly enjoyed this conversation. Please check out some of the resources that I have placed in the show notes. And if you would, follow the work of Helle Jorgensen. She's doing incredible things and helping our world be a better place. I hope you do the same. I hope you are well. Take care, everybody. As always, thank you for listening. Bye-bye. You, my friend, have just finished another episode of Phronesis, Practical Wisdom for Leaders. To get in touch with me, visit www.scottjallen.net or send me a note at scott@scottjallen.net. I can also be found on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Now, if you have feedback, I would love to hear it. And as always, thank you so much for listening to Phronesis. If you like Phronesis, I have a second podcast. It's called the Captovation Podcast. That's with an O, Captovation Podcast, where I speak with experts on the topic of designing and delivering incredible presentations. And now, Kate's twin sister, Emily, with the outro.
You've been listening to Phronesis, Practical Wisdom with Scott Allen.